Greg, Atlanta Police, Fulton County Sheriff's Office, they both sent employees to Miami this week. Talk me through how these law enforcement agencies are preparing for a possible indictment.
Law enforcement agencies see this as a dry run, see what happened in Miami and Manhattan as a dry run for what could happen if Atlanta prosecutors pursue charges against the former president and his top deputies. Because remember, here in Atlanta, this indictment could be much broader than what we've seen in Miami and Manhattan. It could involve members of Donald Trump's inner circle. It can involve local officials here in Georgia. So we could be looking at a very broad indictment. And they're down in Miami. They were down in Miami this week, picking up tips on how to respond, how to prepare for protesters, demonstrators. The media is a big part of it as well, because there'll be a crush of reporters here on top of all the demonstrators and just the passersby who just want a glimpse at history.
Frank, the AJC reports, quote, there are many reasons why Georgia may want to look to its southern neighbor when it comes to handling Trump. Florida is closer to Georgia politically than New York, has more similar gun laws. And Miami and Atlanta's law enforcement resources also pale in comparison with New York City. What is the type of resource sharing, not just between cities, but with the FBI as well? What is the benefit of Atlanta officers getting a real-time preview of what could play out in Georgia?
Well, that passage about the gun laws was particularly important because of Georgia's permissive gun regulations and gun measures here in Georgia, because they do mirror a lot of what Florida has already adopted. Look, you know, I know local law enforcement officials will be coordinating not just with state law enforcement officials, but also federal law enforcement officials. It's going to be a joint operation. I know that state law enforcement authorities are already very closely watching. So they'll be looking maybe even to do some joint exercises and other measures to prepare for August. And because August is when Bonnie Willis has notified local authorities she expects to make a decision.
Frank?
Yeah, count me amongst those who say that while it's really essential and fortunate to have an example to look at in real time for the Atlanta law enforcement down visiting Miami, count me among those people who say Miami wasn't the best example of the strongest security. Secret Service interacted consistently as they usually do, asked for the things they usually do down there, and didn't get them in all cases. So if you saw at the very end, as Trump was exiting the building, there was an individual who ran up, for example, and could have easily have been armed and taken shots at the motorcade or others. Things like that, more barricades need to be thought about. Look, any strong security plan is based on an assessment of risk and threat. You've got to do that across all the agencies that Greg just rattled off: FBI, DHS, Secret Service, the Marshals, Georgia State Patrol, county and local police, of course. But you also have to understand something that Greg alluded to, which is this is very different in terms of what the indictment is going to be about, if it ever comes about. And that is, it's about trying to overturn a valid election. It's about the big lie, the same big lie that incited the violence on January 6th. So good news. Over 1,000 arrests for participants in the January 6th violence has had a chilling effect, particularly on organized groups. That's the good news. The bad news is they've had a lot of time to think about this. Bonnie Willis has projected this thing way ahead of time and talked about when it may be happening. That gives bad people time to plan some bad things.